So good morning everyone. So I am Christine Joy Azara and I am the last discussant from the fourth group. So just a quick review. So our group has talked about producing learning resources using technology tools. So from the previous discussants, so we have learned about the many technological tools which we can use in crafting our varied learning resources which can really aid an effective teaching learning process. And now we are now down to the third lesson, which is all about the Universal Design for Learning, or the UDL. So what is this concept all about? So let us all find out. So the concept stemmed originally from the UD principles, or the Universal Design Principles, as well as from research in neuroscience on how the brain learns. So that is according to Rose and Mayer 2002. So these are the anchorage of the Universal Design for Learning. So first one are the principles of universal design, and the second one are the researches that focuses on how the brain learns. So according to Dalton et al. 2019, so universal design for learning applies the concepts of accessibility and inclusion. So beyond physical environments, to design teaching and learning opportunities in ways that are varied, accessible, and engaging for all students, including those with differing needs and abilities. So in this slide, I have highlighted the words accessibility and inclusion. That is because when we say universal, it is being defined as existing or available for everyone, meaning para sa lahat. And with that, we can therefore say na dapat lang na meron tayong accessibility, meaning lahat may access para magamit itong bagay na ito. And that means na lahat ay included. So we can then achieve for inclusion. So walang maiiwan, no one will be left out, and lahat makakasabay kasi we are providing means para magamit ito ng lahat. So note that this is very important in the teaching learning process kasi ini-aim natin na makapagbigay ng learning sa lahat ng klase ng estudyante. So dapat walang mafe-favored because we should always aim for inclusion or inclusivity. So next slide. So here are the 7 principles of universal design which are developed by Ronald Mace et al. Of North Carolina State University, which was then cited by the National Disability Authority 2020. So first principle is equitable use. So the design is useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities. So people, for example, so in discussing the 7 universal design principles, so note that I will be anchoring it in the teaching learning process, meaning the users are the teachers, us, and our students. So by the title of the first principle, so equitable use. So dapat itong design na gagamitin natin in teaching and educating our students are giving utilization, equal utilization sa lahat ng klase ng estudyante, whether their ability is less from the others. So even those with who needs special care, dapat ma-accommodate din natin sila. Dapat yung design is magagamit din nila in the same way na nagagamit ito ng the rest of the class. So here are the guidelines. A, provide the same means of use for all users, identical whenever possible and equivalent when not. So in providing on the means on paano ito magagamit, at the very possible way, dapat siya ay identical. Kung paanong nagagamit ng isa nating estudyante, the same way na magagamit ito ng isa pa nating estudyante. However, if that is not possible, hindi man magkatulad na magkatulad, dapat is magkatumbas. Meaning, yung pagkakagamit ng isa nating estudyante, iba man dun sa isa, is parehas lang din ng amount. By that is parehas nilang marireceive yung equivalent or equal privileges. Okay? So the next one is avoid segregating or stigmatizing any user. So this is a big no. So we should always aim for inclusion and not for any segregation that will lead to discrimination. Next, give provision for privacy, security, and safety because it is a right and a privilege that should be enjoyed by everybody. Next is make the design appealing to all users. So it is very important in the field of the teaching because we do all know that the act of making something appealing in the eyes of our learners will make or will be catching their interest na importante because that is the very foundation of learning. Because if they do not want to learn, there will be no learning at all. So that is the first principle, equitable use. Now, for the principle 2, it is flexibility in use. So the design accommodates a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. So having the thought na dapat itong magamit ng lahat, dapat siya ay flexible. Okay? So, even those individual na iba yung preference and ability, dapat ma-accommodate natin siya. So, the design should be flexible enough para magawa yun. So, here are the guidelines. So, provide a choice in methods of use. However, just like what we have mentioned, at the very most possible way, dapat ito'y identical. However, if not possible, dapat is equivalent. But still, there should be a choice in equivalent or identical methods because iba-iba nga yung preferences and abilities ng ating mga estudyante, for example. So, next one, accommodate right or left-handed access and use. So, this is very important as well in the field of teaching because hindi lahat ng ating estudyante ay right-handed. So, meron proportion ng student population ang left-handed and we do all know na importante yung jotting down notes when the teacher is discussing because I myself is a kind of learner na mas natututo kapag nagsusulat ako kapag habang nagdi-discuss yung teacher ko. So, we should always bear in mind na hindi lahat ng ating estudyante ay right-handed and we should also consider those whom are left-handed. So next one, facilitate the user's accuracy and precision. So it is very important as well, most especially in the scientific arena. So we should always aim for accuracy and precision. Next and the last is provide adaptability to the user's pace. So yung design natin, dapat maging adaptable siya sa lahat ng ating estudyante na may iba-ibang pace ng pagkatuto. So in that way, ma-achieve pa din natin yung sabay-sabay na pagkatuto ng ating mga estudyante kasi nga adaptable yung ating design doon sa iba't ibang pace ng pagkatuto ng ating mga estudyante. So that will be the second principle, flexibility in use. Now, the third principle is simple and intuitive use. So the use of the design is easy to understand regardless of the user's experience, knowledge, language skills, or current concentration level. So since dapat nga is sabay-sabay na matuto in equal amounts ang ating mga estudyante, so yung pagkakaintindi nila, pagkakaunawa dapat nila is hindi din may nauuna at may nahuhuli. And we can achieve that by providing the simple means of presenting the information that they need. So, dapat yung mga information na ibibigay natin is madaling maunawaan. So, here are the guidelines for the third principle. So, A, eliminate unnecessary complexity kasi hindi naman kinakailangang complex ang mga bagay-bagay para mas madaling matutunan ang mga bagay-bagay. So, we should aim for simplicity. So, next, be consistent with user expectations and intuition. So, dapat provide natin kung ano yung ine-expect ng ating mga estudyante. Next, accommodate a wide range of literacy and language skills because we do all know that communication has a great role to play in the teaching learning process. So, kung hindi nila naiintindihan yung nais nating iparating, that will entailing a difficulty or a problem kasi hindi nila matututunan kung ano man yung gusto nating i-inculcate sa kanilang mga minds. Next is arrange information consistent with its importance. So we should provide information that is from the most important to the least important. Next, provide effective prompting and feedback during and after task completion. So during task completion, it is important that we constantly monitor our students so as to provide immediately the help they need. So, whenever they have queries, madali natin silang masasagot so as for them to accomplish their task accordingly. So that is the third principle, simple and intuitive use. Now, the fourth principle is perceptible information. So, the design communicates necessary information to the user effectively, regardless of the ambient conditions or the user's sensory abilities. So, as you can see, ito ay konektado dun sa simple and intuitive use. So, kung simple nating maipepresent ang mga information, that means mapiperceive ito ng ating mga estudyante na may differing needs and abilities. So, in that way, sabay-sabay silang matututo and walang maiiwan. So, everyone will be included. Therefore, we will be achieving inclusion and accessibility. For the guidelines of the fourth principle, so use different modes such as pictorial, verbal, and tactile for redundant presentation of essential information. So as you can see, these three modes represent or caters the three kinds of learners whom are visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learner. So dapat nating i-consider na may mga bata na mas natututo through pictures, through graphs, and also meron din naman na through listening. And also, minsan kailangan na nagagawa talaga nila yung mga bagay-bagay for them to learn what we want them to learn. So, dapat nating i-consider na lagi tayong gumamit ng iba't ibang modes sa pagpapresent ng paulit-ulit ng mga information. So, repeating the information again and again is important para maging intact talaga yung learning sa utak ng ating mga estudyante. So, for the next one, provide adequate contrast between essential information and its surroundings. So, we should always make it clear na ito yung mga essential and ito yung mga background information. Next is maximize legibility of essential information. So, dapat lahat is mapiperceive clearly ng lahat yung essential information. So, for example, in the PowerPoint slides na ginagawa natin, so, dapat legible yung mga info na nakalagay sa slide. So, hindi dapat siya presented in creative fonts kasi minsan hindi madaling mabasa ng mga estudyante. So, dapat is yung font na madaling mauunawaan ng mga estudyante. So, that is legibility. Next is differentiate elements in ways that can be described. So, make instructions that are clear. So, dito, for example, in the science subject, we have elements and compounds. So, in differentiating these two concepts, so these two can be described. So, for example, the element is a material consisting of a single type of atom. Pero pag sinabi natin compound, it is made up of two or more elements. So, we can provide description and in that way, mas madaling mauunawaan yung mga concepts na ibinabato natin sa ating mga estudyante. So, the same goes in giving instructions or directions. Dapat malinaw and hindi magka-create ng double meaning kapag nabasa ng ating mga estudyante. Kasi importanteng maipresent ng clearly ang mga instruction because that will guarantee the task completion that is according or that is on track. So, hindi naliligaw yung ating mga estudyante. So, the last one is provide compatibility with a variety of techniques or devices used by people with sensory limitations. So, yung pagpapresent natin ng information, dapat is compatible pa din even with those or even for those students na nangangailangan ng assistive devices kasi nga meron silang sensory limitations. So, dapat is mapaperceive pa din nila yung information even them having sensory limitations. So, that is the fourth principle, perceptible information. Next will be the fifth principle, which is about the tolerance for error. So, the design minimizes hazards and adverse consequences of accidental or unintended actions. So, this is to reduce interruptions na alam natin na somewhat nakakasira ng momentum or flow of the discussion, for example. So here are the guidelines. So arrange elements to minimize hazards and errors. Most used elements, most accessible, and hazardous elements eliminated, isolated, or shielded. So gagamitin ko yung konteksto ng science laboratory experiment in explaining this principle. So in the first guideline, it says that ini-eliminate natin yung mga hazardous elements. So sa laboratory experiments, so ginagawa natin, nagbibigay tayo ng mga alternatives. Kasi nga yung realia or the real and actual materials na dapat nilang gamitin might be hazardous. For example, dun sa mga estudyante in the lower years, so grade 7, so hindi recommended na ipaghandle sila ng mga ganoong equipment and chemicals. That's why nagbibigay tayo ng mga alternatives na mas safe nilang gamitin. But note na yung mga alternative na yon ay with the same efficiency as those with the realia. So, yun, ini-eliminate natin yung mga hazardous elements. Kasi we should always aim for the security and safety of our students. Next is provide warnings of hazards and errors. So, gamit na gamit din to sa mga science lab experiments. So, laging may note, warnings na ilagay ang mga equipment sa mga lugar na open area para hindi agad makapagsiklab ng apoy. Huwag ilagay sa mga bagay na like cortina na madaling makapagsindi, and so on and so forth. So, laging may warnings of hazards and errors. Kasi kung hindi tayo maglalagay ng ganun, pwedeng maging maput in danger ang ating mga estudyante na hindi naman natin hahangarin. So, laging dun tayo sa safety and security ng ating mga estudyante. So, third one, provide fail-safe features so as nga to reduce hazards and discourage unconscious actions in tasks that require vigilance. So, for example, sa science lab experiment, mag-iinit kayo sa tripod. So, kung yung mag-iinit is lumilipad ang isip, so that will entail problem and that will be dangerous. Kasi nga dapat vigilant ka. You should always carefully observe kung kumukulo na ba yung tubig. Kasi paano kung natapon bigla? Paano kung biglang lumaki yung apoy nang hindi mo namamalayan. So, makakapaglikha ka pa ng sunog. So, dapat lagi na in doing science laboratory experiments, everyone is vigilant. So, we should always remind our students to observe carefully. So, keenly observe everything happening in their surroundings. So, as for them to keep themselves safe. Okay? So, that is the fifth principle, which is the tolerance for error. So, the principle 6, low physical effort. So, the design can be used efficiently and comfortably and with a minimum of fatigue. So, hindi lang dapat yung design is makikater yung mga physically fit. Yung kahit kaya talagang gawin ang anumang spectrum ng activity na nagni-need ng physical effort. So, here are the guidelines. So, allow user to maintain a neutral body position, use reasonable operating forces, minimize repetitive actions, and minimize sustained physical effort. So, I will be highlighting the last one. So, hindi pwede na from the very beginning up to the very end, ganito kataas yung energy nila. So, hindi dapat sustained yung level ng physical effort kasi that will be too draining. That will be entailing too much fatigue on their end. So, dapat habang gumagawa sila, efficient but still comfortable sila. So, there will be times na mag-need ng mag-exert sila ng too much physical effort, pero hindi yan dapat all throughout. Because we are aiming na gagawa sila pero hindi naman sobrang magkukos sa kanila ng stress and fatigue. So, that is the sixth principle, low physical effort. For the seventh and the last one is the size and space for approach and use. So, appropriate size and space are provided for approach, reach, manipulation, and use regardless of user's body size, posture, or mobility. So, dun tayo lagi sa bibigay ng inclusion. So, whether their body size is big or small, yung posture nila or yung mobility nila is kaiba sa the rest. So, dapat pa rin silang ma-accommodate through providing them appropriate size and space. So, here are the guidelines. So, provide a clear line of sight to important elements for any seated or standing user. So, dapat malinaw na nakikita yung mga elements na gagamitin natin. For example, our visual aids. So, dapat malinaw na na-view ng lahat. Next, make reach to all components comfortable for any seated or standing user. Next, accommodate variations in hand and grip size. So, for example, if they will be holding a beaker. So, given the fact na meron kang estudyante na medyo maliit, and that means yung grip size niya din is maliit rather, and hindi niya kakayaning hawakan yung big beaker na malaki. So, i-accommodate mo siya through considering his or her condition, na hindi lang lahat ng beaker na kukunin mo sa laboratory is malalaki. So, kukuha ka ng varying sizes of beakers so as to accommodate all of your students. So, the last one is provide adequate space for the use of assistive devices for those who needs personal assistance. So, ito ay para doon sa mga estudyante that needs special care. So, for example, the braille. So, kung gagamitin iyon ng iyong estudyante, there are times na baka hindi kayanin or hindi ma-hold ng desk ng bata yung braille. So, you should provide appropriate space for that kasi kinakailangan niya yun para makasabay siya sa learning together with all of his or her classmates. So, that is the 7th principle, and those are all the 7 principles of universal design. And now, let us head to the 3 UDL principles. So, in this part, ito talaga ay nakaangkla na sa learning. So, here are the 3 universal design for learning principles which are cited by the Center for Academic and Faculty Development 2020. So, each student learns differently and can benefit from having a variety of learning formats to choose from, flexible assessments, and tools to help with organization of new information and skills. So, this is rooted on the fact that each of our students has their unique learning style and multiple intelligences. So, iba-ibang paraan kung paano sila matututo at the maximum. So, with that, yung ating mga teaching methodologies na makapagbibigay sa kanila ng learning opportunities is iba-iba din dapat. So, it should be varied in a way na lahat ng learning approach ng ating mga estudyante is ma-accommodate. So, also, yung flexible assessment is important kasi in that way, hindi lang magiging isa yung means para malaman kung gaano kalalim and kalawak yung natutunan ng ating mga bata. So, we can provide aside from the written assessment, yung mga authentic assessments such as performance and project-based. So, in that way, flexible, meaning hindi mo makukonclude mo effectively kung ang iyong estudyante is nagpro-progress ba o hindi. Kasi nga, hindi lang iisang means of assessing or evaluating yung kaya mong i-implement. So, also, with the varying learning opportunities na meron sila, so magkakaroon sila ng madaming tools, madaming ways para mag-organize mag-organize ng new information and skills. So, with this, it is indeed true na ang universal design for learning is crucial and significant. So, the UDL provides us with a variety of strategies and resources to help meet diverse learning needs, improve accessibility to learning opportunities, and increase student success. So, here are the Principle 1, provide multiple means of representation. So, we should present information and content in different ways. So, hindi lang dapat iisang means. Kasi, baka hindi ma-perceive ng lahat ng ating mga estudyante kung ipipresent lang natin ng information in a specific way. So, maaring makater lang nito ang isang set of students and maaring may ma-left out. So, it should be, there should be multiple means of presenting information. That is the first principle. And as for the second principle, it is provide multiple means of action and expression. So, differentiate and the ways that students can express what they know. So, dapat ma-express fully ng ating mga estudyante yung kanilang thoughts and opinion. And by that, dapat iba-ibang ways para hindi sila maging limited. Hindi ma-overcome natin yung limitations, okay? Para ma-express talaga nila fully kung ano yung gusto nilang sabihin. And also, stimulate interest and motivation for learning for the users, for the use of assistive device or personal assistance. So, we should always aim for keeping and maintaining the interest and motivation of all our students, even for those user that needs assistive devices or personal assistance, because it is indeed true that without the interest, without the desire to learn, there will be no learning at all. So the third principle, which was not included in the slide, is the principle of engagement. So the UDL encourages teachers to look for multiple ways to motivate our students. So that is the third principle. So engagement, dapat ma-engage natin ang lahat ng ating mga estudyante, because in that way, learning will really took place. And that is not just learning, because that will be an effective learning. So those are the three universal design for learning principles. So the above cited concepts and principles of the universal design for learning are very helpful to rationalize why it is very important for every teacher not to just pick any instructional tool for the sake of having one, and for the teacher to integrate technologies without understanding some learning principles. So sa mga principles na ipinresent ko, we can imply na it is very helpful talaga na alam natin na may mga considerations tayong ginagawa before crafting our instructional tools. So, we have to put many things in consideration, most especially the varying and the diverse needs of our students. So, lagi nating iisipin na hindi lahat ng ating mga estudyante ay may iisang abilidad at kakayanan. So, gayon din na mayroon lagi nating isipin na they have their own ways of learning, na hindi lamang iisang way kung paano matututo ang ating mga estudyante. Because through considering those, we can make the best instructional tool na flexible sa lahat ng mga ating estudyante. And also, in the universal design for learning, and also sa universal design for learning, we can imply that technology will be a great aid. So in accomplishing our mission to provide access to all and to achieve inclusion, so pwede nating gamitin yung mga different technological tools na present ka ng ibang discussants. However, make sure that upon utilizing those technological tools, you have a background knowledge regarding the learning principles na connected doon. So, lagi na iangkla natin ang ating mga gagawing academic or curricular decision sa mga principles of learning na importante. So, that would be all for the universal design for learning, and also that will be all for the report of our group, which is the fourth group. So, that would be all, and thank you.